So what is news? What makes something a news story? How are stories put together and how are they presented? The best thing you can do right now, starting now in the course and also throughout the entire semester, is to start consuming news. Whether it's on a television broadcast, a magazine story, newspaper story, online news site, or radio broadcast, start paying attention to news and not just being a passive consumer of that news, but starting to break down the components of that story. That's the first thing we're going to do in this class, because I think that will really help you understand how a story is put together, and it'll get you prepared to write your own nonfiction stories. So when you look at a story, think about a lot of different things. One, what's the main focus? What focus did the reporter pick for that story? Usually you can look at the opening graph or the opening graphs of a written story to get an idea for a print story. You can also look at a broadcast story and see how they're framing that. What's the emphasis that they see about a particular story? How did they report that story? Reporters need to get information, to get facts, and to do research. Who did they talk to? What sources were used to get a particular story? Not just people, but other sources of information that went into reporting that story. How did they organize that story? Look at different ways in which the story clues about the importance of a story. If the story is on the front page of a newspaper, that means that the story is considered to be pretty significant. If a story is buried on the inside section of a paper, say on page A42, that means it's less important than stories on the front page. Even in a television broadcast, if a story leads the newscast, they're considering that an important story as opposed to a story that turns up later on in the broadcast. If the story is on the home page of an online news site, that means it's more important than stories that are kind of more inside on the news site and a little harder to find. Start looking at different ways stories are emphasized, the way the information is presented, if it's in a print or an online format, what sort of graphics go along with that, or multimedia content are also included along with that story to better tell that story. We're going to look at an online story together. It's the assignment you're going to have in this unit. We're going to look at the same story, and I want you to kind of break down the components of that story, including multimedia content. Is there video? Are there photos that went along with that story? You can look at headlines, and the headlines, the smaller headlines beneath that main headline, those are called summary blurbs or subheads. Look in which ways in which they try and frame the main focus of a story just using the headlines and subheads. Look at the opening graphs of a particular story. Are there any graphs that go along with that, or other kinds of graphic elements, maps or information boxes or anything like that they use to tell a story? And you can also look at things that are missing, things that you think should have been in the story, maybe sources that they should have interviewed, or information that's missing. You can also debate the whole element of the news story itself. Is it even worth a story? Or are there other aspects of the story that maybe are more important that weren't included there? So when you start paying attention to news and not being a passive consumer, but trying to break it down, start thinking about what elements go into making certain stories news.